people are beginning to compare Barack Obama's administration to the failed administration of Jimmy Carter. But an actual better comparison is to the Roosevelt administration. And we can look at this with the help of an excellent article written by a colleague of mine, Dr. Lawrence Reed. He's the president of the Foundation for Economic Education in New York. And the title of the article is The Great Myths of the Great Depression. And it turns out that during the first year of FDR's administration, his New Deal, he called for increasing federal spending to $10 billion, while revenues were only $3 billion. Between 1933 and 1936, government expenditures rose by more than 83%, and federal debt skyrocketed by 73%. President Roosevelt signed off on legislation that raised the top tax bracket to 79%, and then later to 90%. And Hillsdale College economics professor Bert Folsom, the author of a book called New Deal or Raw Deal, Bert Folsom notes that in 1941, President Roosevelt proposed a 99.5% marginal tax rate on all incomes over $100,000. When Roosevelt's top advisor questioned him about the idea, Roosevelt replied, quote, "Why not?" And President Roosevelt had other ideas for stimulating the economy. That included the National Recovery Act. The economic impact was immediate and powerful. It drove unemployment even higher than what it was. Industrial production dropped. And you hear so many black Americans worshiping Roosevelt. But blacks were very hard hit by the National Recovery Act, the NRA. As a matter of fact, during the 30s, black spokesmen and black press often referred to the NRA as the Negro runaround, or Negroes rarely allowed, or Negroes ruined again, or Negroes robbed again, and also no Roosevelt again. And as a matter of fact, the courts eventually ruled the NRA unconstitutional, and as a result of that court ruling, unemployment fell to 14% by 1936 and even lower by 1937, but it remained very high. And by the way, for those pundits out there saying that Obama cannot win the election because unemployment was so high, President Roosevelt won elections when unemployment was 20%, much higher than what it is today. So the high unemployment is no guarantee that Obama will lose the election.
It's only been 2.5 years. I got 5.5 years more to go.
Roosevelt's agenda was not without its international admirers. The chief Nazi newspaper, Volkskaiser Beobachter, something like that, repeatedly, quote, praised Roosevelt's adoption of National Socialist strains of thought in his economic and social policies, close quote. And again, they praised him for, quote, the development towards an authoritarian state based on the demand that the collective good will be put before the individual self-interest. Roosevelt himself called Mussolini admirable and professed that he was deeply impressed by what Mussolini accomplished, maybe making the trains run on time. And Roosevelt's own secretary, Henry Morgenthau, saw the folly of the New Deal and wrote, quote, we have tried spending money. We're spending more than we've ever spent before, and it does not work. We have not made good on our promises. I say after 8 years of this administration, we have just as much unemployment and an enormous debt to boot. Here's what Roosevelt's New Deal accomplished. His New Deal policies turned what would have been a sharp 3 or 4 year downturn into a 16-year affair. And so the 1930s depression and the problems that we're having today are caused by and aggravated by acts of government. And this is the reason why we're in the mess that we have today. And so we have to ask ourselves, do we want to repeat history by listening to those people who created the calamity? I mean, listening to the politicians today, both Democrats and Republicans, in terms of what to do, that's like calling on an arsonist to help you put out the fire. The arsonist caused the fire, and here you are calling on him to help you put it out. And keep in mind another thing, ladies and gentlemen, that from 1787, when we became a nation, until 1930, there were recessions, there were depressions, sometimes called panics, and there's no intervention. No one thought that government should do something to get us out of the depression because it's not authorized by the United States Constitution. And when government did get in, starting with Herbert Hoover, and then later with Roosevelt, when government started messing with the economy, then they started messing things up. That is, we had depression from 1930 until it was after World War II, I'm sorry. The depression did not end, and did Americans start having a better life until after the war. And so Obama, I wouldn't put him in the category with Jimmy Carter. I would put him in the category with FDR. And FDR's administration, it's painted as a wonderful administration, but it was an abject failure.